So today I'm going to start working on this giant shower pan. I'm going to treat this as basically two separate shower pans with a slope, kind of a hump right in the middle. And because this is a curbless shower, the only way to make this work is these flow FX drains have to be tight right against the subfloor, which means with lath under it, it's going to be about a 1/4 inch thick right there, up to about 1.25 inches on the perimeter. Now, normal deck mud, you just can't go that thin. It won't hold up. There are some fortified deck muds out there, but even those do not really say that you can go down to a 1/4 inch. So a couple years ago, we had a need to do this, and I experimented with Planitop 330 fast mud. A thin pan, 1/4 inch up to 1.25 inches. Felt super comfortable with it. I've done a couple dozen of them since then. Mapei does not necessarily stand behind that, but I do, and I know it works and I trust it. So do your own research. You know, don't take my word for it, but this is the system I use to float a thin curbless shower pan. So today I'm going to put down some lath, set my drains into mud, screw them down so they're as tight as can be at the subfloor. Then I'm going to make a perimeter hard screed around everything with 330 fast. The thing about 330 fast mud is it's super gooey. It's not like deck mud. If you try to just screed it like deck mud without some kind of a hard perimeter, you're gonna hate your life. It is gonna be a total mess and it's not gonna work. You really need a hard edge to ride a screed on for it to work. It's just too gooey otherwise. So today that's the plan. Put down lath, make a perimeter hard screed, and then I got some other stuff I gotta do. And then tomorrow, float this big pan and kind of show you how I do it. Again, this is a Tarkus method. It is not a Mapei approved method, but it is Tarkus approved and it works really good. So I'm gonna do it. Okay, I went ahead and put my lath down. Now in a regular deck mud job, we will put a cleavage membrane underneath the lath, like tar paper or 6mm poly or something. I do not do it when I'm doing a thin 330 fast pan. And my reasoning for that is because I'm going so thin at the drain here, 1/4 inch thick. I really want that mud to like seep down into all these cracks and give me a little bit more girth and a little bit more mechanical bond. I may be wrong in that. Like I said, this is kind of a maverick method. There's really no standard for it. There's no written, standard or instructions for it. So just off my own common sense and rational thinking, that's how I've decided to do these. I may be wrong. I feel like if I put a cleavage membrane under it, it's gonna limit my thickness of my mud a lot thinner, and I feel better having it seep down into all these grooves and really create a stronger mechanical bond. Granted, the mud won't be isolated from the plywood. It's gonna actually bond to it a little bit, but in this application, I feel like it's better. I may be wrong, may be right. I've done a lot of them this way. Haven't had any cracks yet, at least that I know of. You always want to overlap on your lath, but on this particular setup, I made sure to not overlap it into where the drain's going to sit, because I want this drain sitting right on one piece of lath without an overlap under it that's going to kick it up. I want that as thin as I can get it. So I'm going to glue these and thin set them down and then screw them down tight, make sure they're both level. And then at that point, I'm going to determine my pitch blocks based on my drain height and based on the height of my subfloor that we poured the other day, plus some Dietrich heat membrane. So my pitch is going to start right off of that membrane and slope down to the drain at both doorways. So now I'm getting ready to glue my drain in. I put it on and adjusted it for level with some horseshoe spacers, just so that's all done and I can just squish it right in. I'm gonna glue it and squish it in as tight as I can and put a screw in each corner because I want that pressed right against the lath. And maybe you're wondering why I don't just press it right to the plywood and start the lath here. Well, that would buy me a little bit of height, so I wouldn't need to slope my floor or, build this floor up quite as much. But I want this whole pan connected with lath. I want the drain mechanically bonded to the lath out here. So I want just a monolithic piece of lath through all this. And you got to use lath in an application like this. It really just holds everything together, attaches it to the subfloor, and it's just going to make it so much stronger. So I'm going to set these two drains and then on to the next step. Okay, so I got my 2 drains set in ultralight, pushed as tight as I can, and screwed down. I got some Dietrich heat, just one little strip here for now. This whole floor gets Dietrich heat, but I'm gonna do that later. Right now I just wanted some to gauge my slope off of. So from drain to Dietrich heat at both doorways, I've got a 1/4 inch per foot, maybe even a tad more, which is great. So, like I said, I'm doing this shower. It has 2 separate pans. I don't want a big wide mud screed right here because I've got these elongated hex tiles and I don't want a flat point in the middle of my shower. So I bought this angle iron, like garage door hanger stuff. I'm going to shim this up with spacers, set it in mud and screw it down. Then I can screed right off of that and right off of this for both pans. Leave it in, that 330 will spill through there, it'll bond each other. And then I can just set 4 corner dots, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this middle piece will act as my other 2 dots. All right, so I made my little gauge stick. So that is the height I'm going for, that line with the circle. You can see I've used this for a bunch of other things. Time to sand it down and make a new one, but anyway, so I set this angle iron right in the middle, same height. So I used some horseshoes under it, real thick bed of ultralight, and then some upside down foam board washers to screw it in there. That thing is super solid. It's perfectly level with the exact perimeter height that I want. I'll clean that up and then I'll set some corner blocks, and that is gonna be my guide to screed the 330 fast off of. I said it before, you just can't screed 330 fast freehand without some kind of a guide. If you can, good for you. I'd love to see it. Send me some videos. I can't do it. If you can do it, you're better than me. So I like a hard perimeter screed. All right, so now I got my 4 corner pitch blocks set. A lot of times I'll set these with 330 fast with a little tile. I used some Triton board scraps and screwed them down with thin set on this one just because I want to work off of these immediately. I don't want to wait for them to set up. So you can see I got my 4 blocks. Hitting my mark on the angle iron. All 4 of those are level with the Dietrich heat at the doorways and level with the angle iron. So now I can use my 8-foot edge and run some 330 fast mud screeds on all of these. I could use deck mud. I'm using 330 fast because it dries super hard. And I know that it'll just be super crazy hard and firm tomorrow for me. So I'm gonna fill those in with some screeds, call it a day. All right, here's some 330 fast. Now I mix this up way stiffer than I would for like rendering walls. You can see it's still pretty runny and gooey though. This stuff is so gooey. I'm gonna burn it into the lath real good. And then I'm just making a pile, just like you would if you were using dry pack. I'm gonna make a big pile along there. I'm gonna take my 8-foot level and kind of pack it down in. You're not even gonna pack it, you're just gonna push it down in. You gotta carefully slide the level off. If you try to pick the level up, it's gonna just pull it up. This stuff sticks to everything. It's stretchy, it's gooey. Just gotta be really careful. It's a tricky process. I'd highly recommend, if you haven't worked with this before, don't attempt it, a shower pen with it for your first time working with it. Play with it in some other scenarios. First, get a feel for what it does and how it behaves. You also got about 20 to 40 minutes before it dries super hard and it's unworkable, so you gotta move quick. Okay, so I squish my level down onto it, and I'm gonna go along and push it all in to make sure it's all nice and full. And I'm gonna take my trowel, just kind of scrape off the excess like that, so I can use it somewhere else. And then, I can't even do this one-handed, so basically I'm probably gonna screw this up trying to film it. You gotta slide your level as you lift. Now it looks kind of rough right now. As it firms up, I'm gonna come back and just glide my level back and forth across it. So, it's tricky, it's messy, it's gooey, it's a pain in the ass, but it works unbelievably well. I'm gonna go around and do the whole perimeter of this 14-foot shower. And then as it firms up, I'll come back and clean it up. So you're not trying to pack it, you just need to build it up high enough that you can squish right down into it.
See how it just oozed out from under my level there? That is an 8-foot level. Squish it down until it hits that, hits my other dot. I built this one really thick, so I don't really need to push it back in. I'll use my margin trowel this time. Just cut that off. This stuff sticks to itself, and if you don't cut it good enough and try to pull it away, it'll pull that out. It's crazy. It's thixotropic. If you don't know what that means, look it up. I don't know how to explain it. It stays where you want it until you touch it. And as soon as you touch it, it's movable again. But as long as you're not touching it, it stays put. See that big glob? Stays right where I want it. As soon as I touch it, it'll all move. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's cool. That's what makes this stuff so awesome. And it's fiber reinforced. You can see I just slid the level off of that. Way stickier than regular fat mud, way stickier, way stronger. My second screed here turned out quite a bit better than my first one. That's typically how it goes. So I have a feeling my other 4 are just gonna keep getting better. So in about 20-30 minutes, that'll start to firm up, and I can go through with a flat trowel and just cut off all the excess and make these nice and square. I can also fill in any little divots in there if I need to and just rub it down. So tomorrow I'll have a nice hard edge like that just to ride my straight edges off of. I don't need to bond the new 330 to this with thin set because it sticks to itself over and over again. Sticks pretty much to everything really good. So yeah, used about half a bag so far. These 4-foot long ones are definitely a lot easier. You can see, just put it on real thick. You want to really squish it down. It doesn't take much effort to squish it down. You can see why it's so important to have a hard point. You can't just guess with this stuff. Like there's just, you gotta have a hard point and hard edges to work it off of. When you try it, you'll see what I'm saying. So again, carve it off, scoop up the excess. I don't worry about stuff, you know, in the floor here. The new stuff is gonna bond to the old stuff like crazy. This is starting to firm up a teeny bit, but it's not ready yet. So I'm about out. I don't have enough to do these big long ones. I'm gonna mix up another batch. By the time I get those ready, these ones should be ready to start cleaning up. One thing I forgot to mention, because we are going so thin and because it's not isolated from the subfloor with the cleavage membrane, it's super important that this subfloor is bomber. I added lots of extra brackets, blocking. I used 3/4 inch high grade plywood. I got about 10,000 screws in it. If you were doing just a regular thick deck mud shower floor, obviously you need a good subfloor, but you can, it alleviates a lot of that flex that there might be in a subfloor. So super important to get your subfloor totally bomber before you do a thin pan like this. But this stuff will not crack unless there's some major movement in the house. This stuff isn't gonna crack. I know it's not. It's just crazy strong. It's fiber reinforced. It is a bomber system. Maybe one of these days Mapei will say, yes, we approve it. Till then, I approve it. All right, now this first batch is pretty firm. Firm enough that I can take a flat trowel and just carve off all that excess stuff. You've got a pretty small window when it starts to get firm that you can carve it and work it before it just becomes completely hard and you won't know what to do anything with it. So once it's firm, you can clean it up. Get your trowel wet and you can really rub it down. It just gives you a nice, hard, smooth edge to work on. If you wait too long, you're gonna lose it and you can't clean it up anymore. You'll literally be using a hammer and a chisel or a grinder. So you gotta be careful. This stuff's all about timing. You gotta really watch yourself. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. You can see there's a few little voids in there. I'm not too worried about that as long as they've got a nice hard edge on it, because tomorrow I'm gonna do a runny top coat after I pack the majority of it and fill all that stuff in. I did add a little bit of water to this, mix it up ready, so just to show you, you can fill some of those in. But I'm not gonna waste time doing that today. So that's it. I'm gonna clean these all up, and then tomorrow they will be super hard. And I've got a nice perimeter screed to float both of these pans, which is really just one pan, but this is definitely the biggest one I've done with 330 fast by far, so excited to see how it goes. All right, it's about 2:30 and I've got to go grout a little floor that I did over the weekend for my sister-in-law and pick up my daughter who's been staying there with her cousins. So hopefully this process explanation was helpful. Again, this is not approved by anyone really, except me. You're on your own if you do this. I trust it. I know it works. You can see those screeds are firming up. I'm just smoothing them down. They're not pretty, but that doesn't matter. What matters is they're flat and level, and they're gonna be nice and hard to work off of tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll come in and basically do one pan at a time, and I'll make some more videos of that process. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully this is helpful. Nice and hard. Okay, here we are next morning, April Fool's Day. Snowing outside here in beautiful Cedar Hills, Utah. So you can see these are very hard and smooth. They're not pretty. That's okay. I don't mind all of these chunks because that gives me a good mechanical bond with my new mud. But this is just absolutely rock hard. So much harder than deck mud or fat mud would be on the second day. And deck mud or fat mud will never dry as hard or have the same PSI as this stuff. It's just insane. So I'm gonna clean up a little, get rid of any chunks that might be in my way, and get working on this. I've got 12 bags of 330 fast. I think that'll be plenty, but we'll see. So the first thing I'm gonna do, and I do this with every pan that I do, is kind of map out my straight edges. So I go back and forth between calling these screeds straight edges, L edges. I call these screeds or mud rails. So if you hear me say screeds a lot, it's just because that's the first word that comes to mind sometimes when I'm talking. So hopefully you know what I mean. So I want to, it's gonna take a lot of different sizes to screed this pan. So I've got my 3-footer here. This is gonna work great for this whole section, but as we get into this section over here, I'm gonna need a 4-footer. And then on these little ones, I use like my 2-footer and 18-incher. I'm gonna alternate as we go. But a 4-foot is the perfect length for basically from there clear over to there. That's the one I'm going to be using the most. But I do not like screeding 330 fast with a flat edge like this. I could use this nice level. It's the perfect length, but I much prefer to screed 330 with the thin edge of my aluminum L edge like this, because that wider edge is going to stick to it. If you've ever tried to screed fat mud with this side of an edge, it sticks to it and pulls it off the wall. Well, times that by 10 with 330. It just grabs it and sticks. So I'm very tempted to cut this L edge down to 4 feet. It's not a problem to have like a sacrificial set of edges. I've got so many cut ones laying around. Not a problem to do that. I think I'm gonna cut that one down to 4 feet. If you do a lot of mud, you probably have lots of sets of these. This one I think has already been cut. It was 5 feet, now it's like 4.5 feet. So I'm just gonna cut that with my grinder or a chop saw or whatever to 4 feet, because that's the ideal size for the majority of both of these pans. You always want it riding on the drain
and riding on your mud screed or your mud rail. So you can just carve like that. You never want to have to freehand any of this. I mean, maybe there might be a section here where I have to freehand a few inches just to get the screeds to fit. But, you know, if it's not too far, it's not a big deal. But you don't want to be trying to freehand a whole section. It's damn near impossible to get it to look good and work good with this material. So I'm gonna cut down the straight edge, get set up, get rolling. So one thing I wanted to mention is you want your straight edge riding on your mud rail and on your drain. But see over here how it's riding on that end of the drain? That leaves me a big old gap here. You really need it to be riding on this section of the drain and that edge of the wall. So if your screed's too long, sure, it'll work screeding it off, but it's not gonna be a true slope right to the drain. It's gonna be thicker over here and then contour down to the drain at some point. So you really need to have the right size straight edges, even if it means making your own. I mean, I've used foam board before to make some. That works okay with this stuff. But the ideal screed for this stuff is the thin edge of your aluminum L screed. You can get a set of 6 of these for like 120 bucks at Contractors Direct or most tile supply houses. I have 3 or 4 sets. This is the only one I have with me today, so that's what we're using. Now I'll just file that down with a diamond pad or whatever, and that is the perfect size straight edge for what we're doing in here today. And I'm sure on my next job I'll wish it was 6 inches longer for something else, but hey, story of my life, right? Now I forgot to mention yesterday, you don't have to make these out of mud. You can cut pieces of board or foam board to the wall and screw them there. The last one I did, I used cap strip and I pressed it into 330 fast. That gave me a really nice hard edge to screed off of, but I didn't like how wide it was. It really was just a little too wide. I feel like my slope didn't start till after that edge. That's why I went with mud rails thinner on this one. I've used vinyl lattice strips pressed into 330 fast. I mean, you can get creative and do a lot of different things. And since I decided to make this video in a series instead of trying to squeeze it all into like 10 1-minute clips, I'm doing a lot of pointless rambling. So thanks for hanging in there and watching. I'm super stoked with this idea. I think that's gonna work really bomber for that median right there. So this is useful information for doing any kind of a mud pan, not just this application. So get your straight edge sizes figured out beforehand, especially if you're new to mud and you're just learning. Get all this planned out before. So my 4-footer is gonna work great for this whole section to about right there, and then I'm gonna start hitting the back of that drain. So I always wanna stay on the inside of this drain. You don't ever wanna be riding on this opposite side. So once I get to there, I'll switch to my next size down. And I can barely reach almost to where that one stops. I'm gonna have a little section that I'm gonna have to freehand. This one will get me about to there. And I gotta switch to the next size. That one will get me almost to there. Switch down to my 2-footer at that point. And then once I get to the doorway, I can switch back to my 4-footer and do pretty much the rest of this side. So it helps to have a plan. All right, now that I got this all set up and a plan in place, I'm gonna get set up to mix. I'm using my water dispenser so I can get uniform batches with ease. This 330 fast, the ratios say from about 4 to 5 quarts. I usually mix this at 4.5 quarts for rendering walls. I'm gonna go a little thicker on this floor, probably 4 quarts or so to start with, just because it's gonna be pretty thick. Usually I'm not putting this application on walls more than like 1/2 inch, but here I'm going almost 1.5 inches. So I want it a little thicker, but I am gonna mix a few batches runnier to kind of burn it into the lath and do a top coat, which I'll show here. You kind of got to just play with it and get a feel for what you like. This is kind of preference, but it's also kind of trial and error and what I found works the best. So Let's get to it. All right, first batch, that is with 4 quarts of water. You go much thicker than that and you won't even be able to spin it with your drill or scoop it out of the bucket, but you see it's still pretty runny. So the first batch, I really just want to burn it into the lath really good. Just really squish it down into all those little cracks. Get it down nice and tight in the lath. I'm just going to work on that half first because I'm not going to be able to reach that one. Well, I'll be able to reach that one from the other side, but when I do the other one, actually I'll probably be able to reach both of them because this one will be dry by then, so forget about that. Scratching it into the lath really good first. And then once I do that, if I have some left over, I'll dump it in the thicker sections, just kind of work it in, keeping it lower than my mud rails. And then on the next batch, I'll start going deeper. You want to squish it up onto your mud rails too. I mean, it'll bond pretty good without much effort, but I like to just burn it onto those just to make sure. But like I said, this stuff sticks to itself over and over and over again. If you see my koi pond project, we floated all of the walls of that pond with this stuff. Various sections were 3 inches thick. So the way we did it is we did a thin coat like this, scratched it. Within an hour that was dry enough to do another coat, a little thicker, maybe 3/4 inch, scratched it, another coat, and we repeated that until we got 3 inches thick, all in the period of 1 day. And it's crazy. It's crazy material. It's crazy how good it sticks to itself. You just got to get in a rhythm, find a system, and you can just keep layering it and layering it. So pretty rad. All right, so I got that half burned in, and I finished the bucket off just on this thicker end. I'm going to start in this corner. So I'm just piling this excess mud on towards my perimeter, and then I'll mix another batch. And don't worry, one batch is going to start drying before you get to the next batch. As long as you keep it lower than your, drain to perimeter screed and it dries, it's fine. If it's sticking up and it dries, then you got a problem. As long as it's lower, you can always add more. And this is going to shrink a little as it dries, but that's okay. At the end, I'm going to do a thinner coat and just top coat it really quick just to get it nice and filled in and looking a little prettier. So I'm going to mix another batch and just keep filling it in really rough. I'm going to fill it in a little higher than I need it, and then I'm going to start carving it. All right, second batch. For whatever reason, that one's a teeny bit runnier, probably because I didn't let it slake as long. That's okay. So I just dumped a bunch on. Now this is totally different than working with deck mud. It's just different. I don't even know what to say right now. just get it, work it around. You can see how it's a little bit higher there, a little bit higher than my drain. I'm gonna work in quadrants. So I've got enough on there basically to do this quadrant. So I'm gonna start with my 4-foot edge. See how that squishes down into it? You don't really even have to move it back and forth. You can kind of drag it, but if you move it a little bit, wiggle it, kind of works its way in better. And that's it. I mean, that's really all there is to it, is just drag it around. All right, so I got 2 full buckets on here now. So always make sure your straight edge is riding on this side of the drain, not on the opposite side. Just carve it, kind of like if you're floating a wall. See how runny that is once it gets moving? Once you stop moving it, it stays where it's at. As soon as you move it, it flows nicely. That's what thixotropic means, I guess. So then the tricky part is when you got to go from a long edge to a shorter edge, because this one barely reaches. So I'm going to have to kind of fudge it right there and just rest it. And then that little corner section, I'll just leave a little bit high, flatten it down with my trowel later. So this one will get me to about there. And then I got to switch again. If that makes sense. All right, so third batch, I just dumped a bunch on there, moved it around with the trowel. You can see it's higher
than my mud screeds and higher than my drain, just barely. And then I'll just keep working it around until I get to about here. I'm gonna switch and do this corner and work my way out the door. So, back to my 4-footer. You can see it's a little low right there at the corner. Doesn't matter. Like I said, I'm gonna do a thin top coat over everything, so any tiny little low spots will be filled in. Just get it as good as you can. You wanna make sure you're always carving off excess mud. So now I'm at my tricky point again. Switch to my 3-footer. Get it right on the corner of the drain. This one's longer, so I can only get to about right there. So I'm gonna have to freehand a little bit of it. Now I got my 3-footer on there. I'm pulling it as far as I can go, then it's hitting the back of the drain. That means I gotta switch sizes. Grab the next size. That's perfect. Keep rolling it until I hit the back of the drain. And at that point, I need to stop and burn that into the lath. And it's probably not the end of the world if you don't burn into the lath, but you want this as strong as possible, especially with that thin part. You can see that's 1/8 of an inch from the lath to the top of the drain. So 1/4 inch realistically down into the lath. And that's okay. It's not super pretty, but that is how it's supposed to look at this point. So don't worry about it. I'll clean up that excess mud so it doesn't go to waste. All right, so I've got 3 bags on the floor, and that makes me happy because I know I'm gonna have enough mud to do this whole thing. I'll probably use 5 on each one. I've got 12, so I know I'm good. Another thing, after each batch, just wipe your straight edges down. It's a pain to keep doing it, but if you don't, this is gonna get dry on there and it's gonna affect your, it's gonna grab the mud more and it's gonna ruin your tools. So if you got a helper, which I don't today, they can just constantly be cleaning straight edges. Clean the rim of your bucket each time, clean your trowel off every couple batches. Work clean. A wet edge and a wet trowel is gonna move a lot better on this material than a gooey or crusty one. And that applies to a lot of things in life. So 3 bags down, probably 2 or 3 more, and keep going. It's been about 30 minutes. It's a little bit of a workout. I like it. All right, now that I'm getting in the zone, I'm feeling a little more frisky, so I just dumped a whole bucket on there. I love the smell of this stuff. It smells like banana Laffy Taffy to me for some reason, which takes me right back to my childhood, riding our bikes down to the gas station and buying like 5-cent Laffy Taffies. Anyway, thanks Mapei for making it smell like banana Laffy Taffy. So, anyway, just push this around. Same as we did over there. I feel like I'm just being redundant at this point, showing you the same thing over and over again. This first batch, not firm yet, but by the time I get this done, that's gonna be firm enough that I can go around there, start working it a little more. Yeah, got some good tunes going today. In a good mood. Now these big straight runs where I can use the same edge for a long time, I love, because you can just put a lot of material on there and just kind of roll it. See it just roll right off the screed. Very nice. You can see where I switched sizes right there and I couldn't quite get a size to work on that. So after it firms up, I'll just clean it up with my flat trowel. Again, don't worry about little divots or pockets or low spots. That's all gonna get cleaned up and filled in. Down to my last quadrant. I think 1 more bag should do it, maybe 1.5. Feeling good. All right, so 5 bags exactly. That's nice. So I'm just working my way around this last little section here. Got a little bit of excess mud that I need to clean off. I could let it dry there and scrape it off in a little bit. But I'm a cheap son of a bitch and this stuff's 40 bucks a bag, so I'm just gonna take my margin trowel, lightly scoop it off.
repeat it. Do it again. And I'll go toss that on the lath over there and burn it in. So that section's already starting to get firm. So I'm gonna go over there and start cleaning that up. And by the time I do that, this will be firm. All right, that took maybe 45 minutes total. It goes pretty quick if you got everything set up. So this is pretty firm. So it's firm enough that I'm gonna go ahead, carve the excess mud off the top of my rails, because I wanna keep those rails nice and clean for my next coat. Carve off any chunks. It's okay that it's not pretty. You can see, just going over it, wet this trowel. I use my little trowel for this one. And carve off any chunks. Smooth it out. I'm not going to smooth it out too much yet because I want it a little bit rough for my next coat. I'm just going to clean off any chunks so it's flat. My OCD really wants to carve all these little things off, but I'm going to leave them intentionally because those are going to give me a mechanical bond to the next pan over here. And at this point, I'll also take my straight edges again and just right them across everything to make sure I'm nice and flat. You can see a little low spot there. That's going to fill in with the second coat. For the most part, I can't see any light under there, which is what we want. We want a nice, uniform, clean everywhere. You can see it's firm enough. Scraping it off now. I hope this helps you see the importance of these hard rails. It really just is so important for this application. So I'm gonna take a little break while this gets nice and firm. Show you the next step, and then do the next one. And it's okay that it's not pretty. Don't even worry about that. What's important is that it's smooth and flat plane. It's all gonna get covered with a membrane anyway. Now at this point, you could call it good if you wanted to. It's pretty good. You know, there's a few low spots that I'm not happy with. So I mixed up a really runny batch, and I'm just gonna take my smaller flat trowel, trowel it on the whole thing. I'm just doing this while I'm waiting for that side to firm up enough. Just gonna skim the whole thing. And you could do this later. You could even do this part the next day if you wanted to. I'm just doing it now because I like it to all be done at once. So I'm gonna trowel that on, and then I'll just do the same process again with my straight edges. And this time, just really cleans it up. You can see that, and that's just gonna give me a nice smooth finish. So I'll do that to this half, and then I'll go do it to that half. Now you can see what a difference that top coat makes. Just fills everything in, gets it back up to the exact height I want it. Like I said, it shrinks a teeny bit. So that first coat was down maybe a 32nd of an inch from my rails. Fills it back up. And then after I do that side, I'll come back here, slick it down and get this trowel wet and just slick it down really good, and it's just going to be so nice and smooth. And on this second coat, because your first layer is drying out so fast, it's really pulling the moisture out of this fast and making it dry out. So you got to work quick with this one. It's already firming up on there. So it's definitely all about timing and sequencing, kind of a juggling act. But once you get a system down, this is just, it's fun, it's satisfying, very effective. Yeah, I like it. So it's literally only been like 15 minutes since I put this top coat on, and it is super hard. So I'm gonna hurry and smooth this down before I do the top coat over there. I just get my flat trowel wet. And really just, you can really work it hard. You can't do this with deck mud or fat mud this quick. That's why I love this stuff. This is just embedding all the little fibers, getting it nice and smooth. It'd be so nice to put a membrane over. So I said you could wait till the next day to do your top coat. You could, but that mud's gonna be so dry that it's gonna suck that top coat dry in like 5 minutes. It won't even be workable. That's why I like to do it shortly after, as soon as I can, pretty much. You can really just
Make that so nice and smooth. So that half is done pretty much. I'm gonna go do the other half. Okay, this second top coat is firm enough that I can work on it. I'm gonna go and just scrape off the top of my rails really good. You don't want any buildup on those because then when you go to put your banding on, you're gonna get a hump. So clean off the wall, clean off the rail. Make sure it's nice and flat. Still a little wet, give it a few more minutes. Smooth it out just like the other one. So that's it. That is your finished look, pretty much. Yeah, might not be as pretty as deck mud, but it is definitely way, way stronger and more crack resistant and just super bomber. Anyway, this one's done. Just finished slicking it down. Took maybe an hour and a half total. It's pretty hard now. You could walk on it. I'm not going to show you the whole process for the other one. I'll do a few more clips maybe, but right now I got to go pick up my daughter. She is at her cousin's house for spring break and she's super sick. So she wants to come home. So I'm going to do that one in a couple hours when I get back. That's fine. That'll give me this one plenty of time to get rock hard so I can walk on it. But one thing I wish I would have learned earlier in my life as a dad is to don't put work before your kids. Don't be afraid to leave work to take care of your kids. Work will always be there. Your kids might not. So just a little pointer from a dad of 23 years. All right, it's been 2.5 hours. This is super solid. Crazy strong. You can see it's really dry. Again, not super pretty, but it is very flat and smooth. You have a hard time driving a nail into that stuff. It's so hard. So I'm gonna break out this other one and call it a day. Not really any need to make any more videos for you, but hopefully this was helpful. So, enjoy. Shower pan number 2, got it all done and screed it in. I'm just doing my thin top coat on this half and then I'll do it on that half and clean it up and these will be done. This second one went quite a bit faster, probably because I wasn't making videos during it, but also once you do one, you get the practice and the next one gets better. That's the intention anyway with everything we do, to be better next time than we are this time. Always trying to improve, always trying to step it up a notch. Man, I just can't tell you how solid that is. I think it's stronger than a 2-inch thick deck mud pan personally, but that's just my opinion. All right, it's 3 o'clock. These are both done. That one over there is hard as a rock. This one is almost ready. Can probably walk on that one in about 10 minutes. Super happy with the way they turned out. Started with 14 bags, got 1.5 left. I used 2 bags for the perimeter screeds and the rest to fill in the middles. It's gonna be really nice to set a membrane over. Got our elevations at both doorways lined up with the Dietrich heat. That's gonna cover the rest of this bathroom. Gonna make for a nice shower. Center point that we use the L channel metal for lines right up with the valves in the center of the shower. Couldn't be happier with it. Definitely a workout. Pretty fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, maybe learned something. Thanks for watching.